My definition of a punk is a DL man, and my baby daddy was a punk, and majority of the men that I messed with in the military were punks, and I just didn't realize the fucking sign.
I need everyone to listen because when I'm scrolling on my free page and I see a video about a man disrespecting a woman, I don't want to open the comment section and see any, that's not a real man, by the way. He gotta be gay. He gotta be DL.
The rise in the DL police on this app is straight women trying to make sense of the fact that they now know that men hate them.
Okay, so you think your man is on the down low. Here are 5 foolproof ways to find out for sure. Girl, I've been exposing DL men since 2022 and have successfully saved the lives of 40+ women from these demonic boy lovers. Do you see how crazy that sounds? Were you intrigued? Did you jump? Because it's time we talk about it. Hey guys, it's up to Imurgency and welcome back to my channel. And today we are talking about something that has been sitting on my heart for a while now, and a conversation that I feel like needs to be had, because I think where this conversation started was fine and well-intentioned, but where it's going and where it is right now is largely problematic, and I don't think we're seeing it as such. And what I'm talking about is the rise of DL hunting, or down low men hunting. And it seems timely to talk about this, seeing as there have been DL allegations of, let's say, presidential proportions, if you catch my drift, but also just a general uptick in DL hunter content and commentary spreading online. Like, I've been seeing this trend online of DL hunters, or at least just women telling absolutely abhorrent stories about men, and the comments under these videos are always quick to say that the man in question here is actually just down low or secretly gay, and implying that that presumption could be the only possible explanation as to why he would treat a woman that way, almost as if blatant misogyny hasn't existed for actual centuries. And when I see things like this, I just have to ask, why are we in it? What did we do? Like, I feel like we've circled around from allyship to just blatant homophobia, because why are we using gay as an insult again? I mean, gay as an insult just in a sort of different way. Like, honestly, some of y'all are just getting a little too comfortable using it in a derogatory way. Like, I'm even seeing people starting to say slurs because they have been reclaimed again. Right. And you may be asking yourself, Rumi, is it really that deep for you to make a whole video about it? And to that I say, yes, actually. Because at its core, when you're ascribing negative traits like being a misogynist, hating women, or just being too feminine or sassy in derogatory ways, such as saying that someone is DL or just secretly gay, what is that really saying about what you think about gay people? Quickly. And if you know me, you know I go hard for my girlies and gays, but it really does get to a point, because it feels like there's a portion of women out there that are finding out that men are actually just misogynistic, because it hasn't been more front-facing and just outwardly allowed over the past, let's say, 10 or 20 years. And instead of confronting and addressing the roots of misogyny and misogynoir, it for some reason is getting blamed for actually being gay. Like, why are ancient misogynist men getting thrown out the gays? Like, we don't want them. And also, just like, why do we assume that a terrible person is gay? Like, why would that be a characteristic of gayness, or at least latent gayness? Like, yeah, there's like the whole like, oh, he's so evil, he must be sexually repressed of it all. But like, no, actually. I heard this quote from a while ago about misogyny saying that like men don't love women but are still sexually attracted to them. Like, right, that's exactly what objectification is. And that right there is the deeply rooted misogyny in question we've been fighting for years. That men don't see women as equals, but rather as things to satisfy them. And I feel like that revelation is me preaching to the choir. But I just want to reinforce again that that is not a symptom of queerness. That's a symptom of years of patriarchy. Now, am I saying that this hasn't happened in the history of ever? That like a man is actually repressing his identity and it comes out in the form of hatred towards women? Like, no, that surely has happened, and sure, it does happen. Like, there are many of stories out there. Like, that's why this whole trend has taken off. And this isn't to invalidate anyone who's experienced this, but specifically what I'm talking about is just like this wave of TikTok DL hunters and the insistence of calling every man whoever shows negative behavior towards women, or on the flip side, shows an ounce of femininity, we as a society, or at least as the internet, throw them deep in the DL basket, or at least just use it as a weaponized insult against them. And I think the language we use here is really important, and as we're going to get into later in the video, words do mean things. Like, I hate to say it, but some straight men, a lot actually, just hate women. And given the times we're living in, it's never been so blatantly in our faces. Now let's dig a little deeper into the fascination around the need to figure out who is DL and who is not. Now, I do want to say right off the bat, I understand fearing infidelity, because that truly sucks and is one of the hardest feelings you can feel in a relationship. But in the case of this DL debacle, that doesn't feel like that is entirely what this is. This feels a little more witch hunty. It feels like there's this need to know or to label someone who isn't behaving in a way that you'd like them to as DL. And as an addendum to that, usually this notion of DLness is framed within the context and narrative of sexual deviance. And again, I am not here to invalidate anyone's experience or to like talk down to anybody because yes, sure, this happens to people. Well, like, why not just leave it alone if that's what you suspect is happening to you? Or if this man is being emotionally abusive or even verbally misogynistic, leave that man alone anyway. Like, the reasonings behind why he may treat you or other people terribly doesn't have to be because he's secretly into men. Like, you can leave a man for whatever reason. And of course, when I say this, I mean like if you're able to safely. I'm not talking about instances where this is dangerous, of course. And it's just like so many things about this conversation suck, obviously. But one thing I think about is how hard we work to move away from gender norms, only to then go back and reinforce them with the DL witch hunt of it all. Like, I really hate to come on here and defend a man, but like, if a man has done anything that can be deemed as vaguely feminine, then that's a wrap. And of course, this is all using the antiquated heteronormative definitions of femininity and masculinity. And it just seems like this terrible backslide, which is not surprising given the increasingly traditional times that we're currently living in. Like, guys, if they float, they're DL and we gotta burn them at the stake, but if they sink, they're just a woman hater. Now let's take a little deep dive into what are the contributing factors of like this DL epidemic to begin with. And I think first and foremost, the problem started at home. So this is a section where we're getting into the history of men on men crime. That does sound a little homoerotic, huh? No, I mean, we're talking about the history of men policing other men's behavior. I feel like we definitely saw this more in the early 2010s growing up. But like, do y'all remember the hashtag no homo of it all? And like men, straight men, actually using that unironically for saying a completely normal sentence about another guy. Like, there were times where boys in middle school and high school were being weird about eating bananas. And that still happens to this day. Like, God forbid a straight man eats a banana or a hot dog in public. Like, I promise you the food's not gonna make you gay if you weren't already. Fast forward to today where the statements evolved into things like pause, ayo, and things like aight man, as signals that one person has gone too far into a non-masculine territory, or if what was said could be interpreted as some kind of homosexual rigmarole double entendre. And the thing about it is that at best, statements like this and conversations like this either lead to a de-escalation or just general disengagement from the conversation at hand, and at worst, occasional violence. And we see this most often in media now for Gen Z and Gen Alpha with streamers.
You dirty ass. I knew it.
So say no homo.
What you mean?
You need a nice long one. Play it again, pause. I said pause.
Like, sure, this is definitely better than beating on gay people and being physically violent, but is this really where male allyship begins? Steering clear of topics or conversations that don't fit into the rigid sense of masculinity? What immediately comes to mind for me is like the whole rhetoric of just don't bring that shit up me, or saying pause or no homo isn't enough. In order to be in community with people, queer or not, you gotta do your part to facilitate a space that people can be comfortable in. Like, you're denying real aspects of your friends that most of the time aren't actually gay, and you know that, so that you can be friends and operate within the masculine bounds of friendship, which is just weird. Think about it like this. Say you have friends that are different from you. The more you treat people like regular people and not like some uncomfortable anomaly to be around, the better it'll be for us all. And it's nice and very kumbaya to say that, but like, that also really does require a shift in perspective from men and women, to then not go on assuming that just because a guy is friends with gays that he's also gay, zesty, or DL. Or even if he doesn't have any outwardly gay friends, we need to stop with the belief that certain behaviors are quantifiably gay. Like, for real, tolerance and basic human empathy check. Now we're gonna get a little academic with it and talk about a study around the concept of homosociality. And I think homosociality is something that we're seeing more and more of between men. And if you're unfamiliar, homosociality is a form of men policing others' behaviors in a somewhat panopticon style. The term homosocial was popularized by queer theorist Eve Sedgwick. And the concept of homosociality describes and defines social bonds between persons of the same sex. It is, for example, frequently used in studies on men and masculinities. They are defined as a mechanism and a social dynamic that explains the maintenance of hegemonic masculinity. A popular use of the concept is found in studies on male friendship, male bonding, and fraternity orders. And it is also frequently applied to explain how men, through their friendships and intimate collaborations with other men, maintain and defend the gender order and patriarchy. Basically, it's the concept of men seeking the approval of other men by dogging on women, or behaving in a way that is most pleasing to the social group, which is usually not including men or gays. And this is not to say that these men are gay or homosexual for doing so, but studies show that men have historically sought to build camaraderie and respect and move in a way that gains the approval of other men as to not teeter the norm and uphold patriarchy. And this right here is misogyny at play, seeking the approval of the same sex by ostracizing, isolating, and objectifying the other. And because seeking approval from your bros can be considered sus, or or glazing, you toss in a lot of homophobic rhetoric and verbiage just so that everyone knows you are not a homo. And unfortunately, even when it comes to women, they are no longer people, but rather social currency, which is as scary and as terrible as it sounds. Like if the bros think she's hot, then that's leverage for the man. The discontinuity between male homosociality and homosexuality results in male homosocial relationships being a form of male bonding, which is characterized by homosocial desire as well as homosexual panic. Homosocial desires refers to men turning their attention to other men, and homosexual panic refers to the fear of this attention gliding over into homosexual desire. That's right, the fear that if you're too good to your homeboys, you might actually want your homeboy. In an attempt to emphasize heterosexuality, fear or hatred of homosexuals and misogynist language are developed. And again, none of this theory is to excuse misogyny or misogynoir, and are 1000% things that need to be unpacked and changed about the culture of masculinity, and especially within Black masculinity. But that is just the level set.
A lot of theories suggest that male homosociality exists on the same spectrum as homoeroticism. But because of homohysteria, there's a really strong conscious social effort to create this diacritical opposition between homosexuality and homosociality in male relationships. So we're conceptualizing male homosocial relationships as a form of male bonding that involves homosocial desire and intimacy, as well as homosexual panic. So they're constantly turning their attention to other men, but then there's a really intense fear that this attention would glide into the homosexual territory.
On top of that, I think that women being homosocial in a patriarchal world is more of a form of protection and survival, as opposed to why men are homosocial. Because within a patriarchal society, male relationships are often structured in a way that reinforces and perpetuates the patriarchy. Their relationships often function as a way to maintain social dominance and male privilege, which is why women are commodities amongst men.
Now we've debriefed on man crime. It's time that we now turn our focus towards the rise of policing men's behavior from women, which is kind of crazy to say given the patriarchy of it all, but hear me out. And one of the more prominent ways we've been seeing this on social media have been from the rise of the
sassy man apocalypse.
Sassy male apocalypse.
Yes, the sassy man apocalypse. And I hate to be the too woke friend. No, I don't. But this trend never fully sat right with my spirit because it just got a little too comfortable with making claims around sexuality and gender expression. Oftentimes it feels like actually policing someone's gender expression, which like guys, I thought we put in the legwork to move away from classic gender stereotypes and roles to a more fluid one. Like what was all that for then? The labels of sassy, chalant, and zesty feel like labels to scare men into acting a certain way or to not act a certain way. And by using gay as the instigating term, it's just again reinforcing homophobia, because if they were gay, then what? Why is being gay or fruity or effeminate the covert insult here?
I love taking the piss out of men. I will do it every day and twice on a Sunday, okay? Don't get it twisted. However, seeing women and girls and just people in general say men are like sassy and things like that for liking like stereotypically feminine things or for not being traditionally masculine is a very slippery slope. It's a very slippery slope into gender essentialism, and it's also wildly homophobic.
Like, it's similar to when people say things like zesty or sus or punk, especially punk, and fruity. Like, I feel like we're getting a little too comfortable using these terms when, especially for those of us that are straight, to insinuate someone is gay. And again, even if they are, what's the problem? Like, why is this something that we need to be super vigilant over? Like, it all harkens back to the misconstrued belief that traditional men traditionally treated women well and with respect. And this current rise in things like red pill content and women hating somehow has to do with like the closeted homosexual men. When again, to reinforce this video's thesis, being a woman hater is not a queer trait. In fact, I'd actually go as far to argue that that is a trait of the traditional man, if we're looking historically. The narrative from all sides of the internet has devolved from, yeah, there are times where people take their closeted repressed emotions and resentment that they can't live their truth out on women unfairly and unjustifiably, to now every man who mistreats a woman is a secret homo, when no, men can be and oftentimes are terrible people. Like, this whole DL until proven straight mentality needs to go. Like, just tossing men who act violent or hateful to women to the gay team is crazy, because misogyny has existed for so long. And if we want to take it a step further, that thought process also is insinuating that gay men hate women, which is like, okay. And I know that this is a sweeping generalization, which likely does not match every single case, but many cases that are being publicized on social media and are becoming part of regular conversation can be and oftentimes are harmful. Like, the lack of attraction from queer men to women does not automatically mean that they hate them. And I know that that's common sense, but the way that this conversation has devolved really makes you wonder, because I think this whole thing is just crazy. And again, I do want to preface, because I feel like I'm coming on hot with this video, this is all not to defend straight men. This is to defend the gays, because shit has been getting wicked, no Ariana. Because at the end of the day, men demonstrating behavior that you don't like or agree with, so you label them as gay as a response, is homophobic, full stop. And I feel like we need to be real about that. Now, a key piece of this conversation that I've been meaning to talk about just generally, and honestly a piece of nuance that I don't feel like is talked about enough, especially in the context of this conversation, has to do around the concepts of bi erasure, biphobia, and the intersection of bisexuality and people of color. Quite literally putting the bi and BIPOC. I'm kidding, that's not what that means. Although when I first heard the term BIPOC, I thought it was bisexual people of color, but we have learned it is Black Indigenous. But like I was saying, I think another aspect of this that so often gets looked over is the fact that the conversation around DL men often gets very black and white, and people tend to forget that bi people exist. And you may be like, yeah, okay, I get it. Bi people exist. But like, why are people not being honest about it and living in their truth then? Well, biphobia. And no, biphobia isn't just a buzzword that I made up and decided to throw in this video. There are actual studies to demonstrate that people report more negative sentiments towards bisexual individuals than gay and lesbian individuals, which for one is interesting, and two is a whole intercommunity discourse that could be a whole separate video. But for the sake of this video, we looked into a study that specifically focuses on the intersections of bisexual identity. And according to this study, which is an examination of attitudes towards bisexual people at the intersections of gender and race and ethnicity, people actually reacted more negatively to bisexual men than women, Black and Hispanic bisexuals more than white bisexuals, and more negatively towards trans bisexuals than cisgender bisexuals. Okay, cool, but what does all this mean? This is all to say that the demographic that experiences the most negative reactions and sentiments are BIPOC trans men, bisexuals, are BIPOC trans men bisexuals, and then cis BIPOC bisexuals. Like, not that this is like the Ginny and Georgia Oppression Olympics or anything, but this is more to show the barriers and challenges this community faces, and how that might lead for some people to stay DL. Because again, I feel like this part of the conversation isn't talked about enough. Oftentimes, DL people are not just gay, they are bisexual because they're still sexually intimate and oftentimes emotionally intimate with the women that they're dating while also having sexual and emotional relations with men. So just because a DL is messing with guys on the low does not mean that he's just gay. And this mentality that we're talking about as to why people stay DL is also rooted in patriarchy. Like, see, for the men out there that hate when I talk about the patriarchy, it literally impacts everyone, including you. Lastly, for this point in the study, current discourse surrounding the down low or DL suddenly characterized secretive bisexuality as being all but exclusive to Black men. Interestingly enough, classical studies of bisexuality in the US focus heavily on white men and women. Shocker. And according to that same study, Black and Latino bisexual men have also been found to be less likely to disclose their same-sex behaviors, particularly to their partners that are women. And when you hear this, it really reinforces some of the sentiments around the whole DL debate, being like, oh, DL men are being very dishonest to women about who they are and who they lay with. And you may be asking why that is. Well, a third crucial factor is the strong lack of acceptance of bisexuality and homosexuality in Black communities that several researchers have noted. And the reasoning behind that is that it's likely that the strong association between masculinity and heterosexuality makes it difficult for ethnic minority men to openly explore same-sex sexual desires and develop a bisexual or homosexual identity. The research goes on to state that the strong association between masculinity and heterosexuality in Black and Latino ethnic minorities should not be understood as an essential link because they cannot be seen independently from the social position of ethnic minorities. And for me, at least, I feel like it's true that there are vastly more queer people in comp-het couples due to society. And I feel like many of us contribute to that daily via the rhetoric that we both use on and offline. Bisexual people, and more specifically bisexual men, exist in droves. But a common thing that I hear from bisexual men is that it's harder for them to date or approach women if they are open about the fact that they've also been with or will continue to be with men. And I'm getting this straight from the source. I have dated plenty of bi men in my day who all share the similar sentiments of like being more romantically attracted to women and would ideally like to marry women, but the large stigma around being a bi man who engages in the other side of bi-ness becomes a sort of barrier to entry, and thus it is easier and more convenient to then continue to be with men. And honestly, I don't know how to feel about being told that as the man who was with the bisexual man at the time. Well, considering I'm single, I think that speaks for itself. And this isn't necessarily to call the girlies out, more so to call everyone in to have a real conversation about the latent internalized homophobia and misogyny that's turning people off, or at least averting people from actually taking bi men seriously or being attracted to them in the first place. I think recognizing this in ourselves is the first step, because that just not in my yard business does not make you the ally that you think you are. Like whenever I talk about this, I always think of that clip of Molly from Insecure cutting things off with that one fine ass solid dude, because he said that he experimented with a guy once in college and decided that he wasn't into it. Like that man made it clear that he was not even bi, but he still got the boot just for confirming that himself. Like, okay, biphobia is a real thing. Molly was running a strict program, you hear me? But the point I'm trying to make here is that it's hard to have a conversation around the rates of like DL men not living in their truth, while also the other side of things being punitive and mildly homophobic to those that do. It's contributing to some of the reasons as to why people stay in the closet or are on the DL. You always hear that sentiment of like, when it comes to being bi and you're a man, then you're just not confident enough to say that you're fully gay. But if you're a girl, you just want male attention, which is obviously for one, just biphobic rhetoric, and two, for both cases is implying that the goal is a man. But this sentiment is still pervasive in ideology, as even in that one episode of Insecure, the worry is that man who just experimented once, mind you, is just a DL man. And when it comes to bi acceptance and bi attraction or lack thereof, the main reasons I see online for women saying it's a preference to not be with a bisexual man has to do with sexual health, which, like, if you're with a partner that you're actually interested in and is mature and safe, that is something that you can easily check or get tested. And I think primarily it's really unfair and dangerous rhetoric to think that every bisexual or gay man instantly has a incurable disease like HIV. Like, yes, stay vigilant and care about your sexual health generally, but that right there is a massive and harmful generalization. Another thing that I hear is that it's just a preference to not want to date bisexual men, and y'all might not be ready for this one, but that's not a preference, that's a rule. And just homophobia. Like, please, what does that have to do with you if that man is with you? Honestly, what does it matter what he's done previously? Like, it's like the same mentality of someone deciding to not be with you based on your body count. Like, why does that matter? Especially if you're already keeping your sexual health in check. I actually saw a really great TikTok on the concept of like black masculinity and homosexuality, talking about how like the worst thing a black man can be is gay. Not me being public enemy number one.
Can we actually deep that the worst thing that you can be as a black man is gay? Let's sit with that. Mad, isn't it? Not an abuser, not a racist, not an actual criminal, a gay man. Two words, religion and misogyny, both of which were arguably inherited from colonization. But that's a topic for another day.
But the conversation goes further, stating that bisexuality itself is an attack on traditional black masculinity. And homosexuality we already know, but bisexuality as well is something that's very frowned upon, both within black male-centered circles and in general society. And like, we don't need to get into the weeds, or more so the roots of black masculinity and why that is such a strong thing, at least in America, because guess what? It stems from slavery. But yeah. Okay, at this point in the video, we've talked about the guys, we've talked about the girls. It's time we talk about the gays. And more so bringing this all around the concept of gay or queer people being the butt of the joke, and ultimately the ones suffering the long-term consequences of this whole debate. At the end of the day, all this discourse just reinforces people's latent disapproval or problems with queerness and gay people. And at the core of the DL allegations, or identifying sus or zesty men, is a disdain for queer men. Even if the man in question is not gay themselves, they should rectify their behavior and abide by the antiquated patriarchal standards as to not be mistaken for gay. Like the concept of smiling in your gay bestie's face while also praying that your kids don't turn out to be gay themselves, and believing deep down that your friends are destined for hell, or preferring that your man isn't bisexual, is all just straight up homophobia, and we can't continue to sugarcoat it as anything else. Normalizing sentiments like this only legitimizes and gets more people comfortable with the inevitable repealing of gay rights and the rise of homophobia, because right now it's still in its coded messaging dog whistling stage, but as we know with most things that have followed this pattern over the past couple of years specifically,
do you think that President Trump is a fascist?
And after President Trump said that, I said yes.
The less we check it, the more comfortable we come around these ideas, the more overt the messaging will become. And that will inevitably bleed into public sentiment and ultimately policies. And if you don't care about any of that, let me make it personal. It's time we talk about the real life dangers of outing DL men. Because with a lot of the discourse around outing DL men, especially from my LGBTQ brothers and sisters, there unfortunately is a real danger that comes with outing these individuals who aren't ready to be outed. And oftentimes that could result in things like bodily harm harm or just flat out schmurder. Like, guys, come on, especially in the community, we know the dangers of being outed. So let's just leave these DL men alone. And that's not to protect them, that's to protect you. Two wrongs don't make it right, and outing someone really is never okay. And I thought we knew this. We never know people's situations, and while yes, being played by a DL man is not fun, whether you're a woman or the secret hookup, but please leave that man alone. And I know there are situations in which some people have built lives together. Maybe there are kids involved, and I want to disclaim that cheating is not okay, and everyone has different circumstances and cannot possibly speak to them all. And when I'm speaking about this generally, I don't mean those extenuating circumstances, but if you do think that your man is DL and you're able to safely leave that situation, do so. While sexuality preferences can be problematic, you don't need to be a part of someone's process. If they themselves aren't ready to be who they are, you don't need to be a part of the process of helping them figure that out if you don't want to. But that also doesn't mean that you're entitled to out someone, because outing people can be very traumatic, further repress people, and or put them in severe danger. And while it's nice to think that we've completely overcome homophobia and now live in a society where it doesn't impact your daily life as a queer person, that unfortunately is far from the truth. The needle has certainly been pushed forward, but there is still a lot more work to be done, and much to overcome, especially if you have intersectional identities. It impacts people from all levels, from personal life to career, especially when the internet is on a witch hunt. And I completely understand it can be easy to get caught up in it. And sometimes it could be really entertaining or even funny. But I think it's about time we check in with ourselves and see what kind of verbiage and rhetoric we're using online and in real life surrounding the queer community. Because at the end of the day, when that day gotta end, we do not have to live this way. These are all really just social constructs we created to uphold the patriarchal system that is obviously not working for any of us. Men, please release yourself from the shackles of homophobia and be yourself. Therapy and self-reflection might be required. And to my ladies, especially my straight girls watching, let's please look inward and address some of that internalized homophobia and misogyny. Because yes, unfortunately, y'all can be under some spells too, okay? And to my gays, leave that DL trade alone. Put that down so that we can all maximize our joint liberated and DL free slay.